The government of our great country belongs to all of the people and not just a handful of wealthy campaign contributors and their super PACs.
As I told you in my last video, the idea that Hillary Clinton was catching up to Bernie in New Hampshire was indeed utter nonsense.
I still love New Hampshire, and I always will.
Fix your face. Fix your face.
Know that.
Bernie won by a landslide, as did, by the way, Donald Trump.
This is something very special.
So New Hampshire was a historic primary for a number of reasons. Both the Republican and Democratic victors came from outside their party's establishment. It was the first time a Jewish person ever won a state primary.
Congratulations to Bernie, in all fairness.
And it was the first win for a reality star with a bird's nest for hair.
Boom, boom.
The next two primary states are Nevada and South Carolina, for both Republicans and Democrats. In this video, I'm going to predict who will win all four races. I'll also talk about what Bernie's strategy should be going forward. But first, let's talk about this question. Who will win?
What began last week in Iowa, what voters here in New Hampshire confirmed tonight, is nothing short of the beginning of a political revolution.
So let's start with the Republican race in South Carolina. As you can see, as with most races, Donald Trump has a massive lead. Ted Cruz is also surging, but it looks to me like he's just changing places with Ben Carson.
Well, thank you, Megan. I wasn't sure I was going to get to talk again.
Marco Rubio has a better chance of taking second place than Cruz has of overtaking Trump.
Believe me.
With 6 candidates in reasonable contention, sorry Jim Gilmore,
He's already dead.
Trump's 16-point lead is pretty much insurmountable at this point, so it's a pretty easy call to make. South Carolina goes to Trump.
It's so beautiful.
The Democratic Party's next primary state is unfortunately also a pretty easy race to call. Not only does Hillary have a substantial lead, Nevada is one of the few states in which Bernie's numbers are actually declining rather than rising. So there's really no contest here. Nevada is going to Hillary.
An absolute disaster for everybody in this country.
The Republican race for Nevada is far more interesting. As with South Carolina, Trump has a huge lead here, and Ted Cruz is also surging. But there's a serious difference in this race. Unlike in South Carolina, Trump is losing ground here.
Some people can't handle success.
As it stands, I would still give the state to Trump, but a few things could really rock the vote. For example, if Ben Carson drops out of the race, a lot of pundits will tell you all of those votes would go to Trump because Ben Carson is the other outsider in the race.
I'm the only one to separate Siamese twins.
But Ben Carson is a lot of things. Aside from being an outsider, he's mild-mannered, religious, and a minority. Anyone voting for him for any of these qualities would be far more likely to go to Ted Cruz than Trump. So a lot can change in the next 2 weeks, but I will give my tentative prediction to Donald Trump.
We may not like it.
In South Carolina, we see a similar story for the Democrats. Hillary is in the lead, but losing ground to Bernie, who is surging. Some have suggested that Bernie doesn't stand a chance in South Carolina because the demographics are not on his side. His supporters tend to be white and liberal. I completely disagree with that assessment. Although Sanders is more to the left than Hillary, liberal is probably the wrong word to apply to a self-defined democratic socialist. But aside from that relatively trivial semantic distinction, Bernie's supporters aren't just more liberal than Clinton's. They're primarily anti-establishment voters. They're passionate about a guy who isn't bought, who wants to fight the corrupt campaign finance system, break up the big banks, and reinvigorate the democratic process. These things are not inherently liberal or leftist. Plenty of conservative and moderate Democrats, as well as independents and even Republicans, want these things as well. The standard left versus right paradigm is a total oversimplification, and it ignores Bernie's real appeal. Now, as far as white voters go, it is true that overall Bernie has more support amongst white people. But I think the way to actually really look at this is that Bernie's support is in Vermont, so places like Vermont, New Hampshire support him, and those places happen to be white. It's not the case that his supporters are white and those people happen to be located in those places. Now, why do I think this? Well, within New Hampshire, which is indeed very white, 49% of people of color actually voted for Bernie. In other words, Bernie and Hillary split the minority vote there. Now, there are good reasons why minorities, particularly black people, might support Clinton. After all, Bill was dubbed the first black president because he plays the saxophone. And a lot of high-profile black politicians have endorsed Clinton, which gives her the veneer of the minority-friendly candidate. But, and I'll do a video on this if you guys want to hear more about it, Bernie Sanders has a much better record when it comes to supporting black and Latino communities. Perhaps his first notable political action was leading the first civil rights protest in Chicago's history. Meanwhile, Clinton and her husband have for decades led the charge to harass, criminalize, and incarcerate a growing amount of the black community. Bernie Sanders will not secure the nomination by appealing to a larger percentage of white liberal voters. If he does win, it will be by getting the message out to people of color that he's the candidate that actually delivers for their communities. That should happen before Super Tuesday. But as far as South Carolina is concerned, I'm afraid it is probably too late.
It's a huge problem.
Hillary will probably win,
Shame.
but I expect it will be a much tighter race than the numbers currently indicate. But I want to hear from you guys. When it comes to Nevada and South Carolina, the Democrats and the Republicans, who are you supporting? And in your minds, who will win?
Let's not insult the intelligence of the American people. People aren't dumb. Why in God's name does Wall Street make huge campaign contributions? I guess just for the fun of it. They want to throw money around.
Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know in the comments section below, what question would you like me to tackle next? And remember, every time someone shares my videos or subscribes to this channel, the world gets just a little bit more beautiful.